Speaker of the House Paul Ryan met with President-elect Donald Trump earlier today at Trump Tower, and Speaker Ryan joins us now in an exclusive interview. Mr. Speaker, how are you? Good to see you.
Thanks, Sean. Good to have you. Thanks
I know we've had our differences, but I know you and Donald Trump had your differences, and you were pretty harsh at times during the campaign. I spoke to him 2 days ago, and he said your relationship is great.
Absolutely.
What happened?
Absolutely.
How did it evolve?
You know, first of all, we agree on the same goals. Our agenda is one and the same. And we quickly decided, first of all, at the end of the campaign, we merged forces. If you recall, Mike Pence and I up there in McGuanago, Wisconsin, saying Republicans come home. You vote Trump, vote for your senator, vote for your congressman, unify Republicans, and look what a unified Republican government can get. That was the pitch we made in the closing moments of the campaign. And yeah, I spent most of my time campaigning for Congress because I wanted to make sure we had a strong Republican majority. And now look what we have. We have a president, Donald Trump, Republican, a Senate majority Republican, which everybody was saying we weren't going to keep, and a very strong House majority. So now we have unified Republican government. It's really exciting. And so very soon after the race, Donald and I said, look, this is fantastic. We have so much to do. Let's forget about, any differences in the past, and let's go get working on this agenda. And that's exactly what we've been doing from that day on.
I know there is still anger among Trump supporters and the Trump base. You said one of his comments you thought was racist or racial, to use the exact words. You had at different times said you're not ready to support him. I remember an exchange you and I had when Donald Trump was going to Wisconsin, and I know you had another engagement. I said, you need to be with him.
Yeah.
And you said, I got to go out and campaign for other people. Why were you so hesitant? Why was it so hard,
Look,
even after he was a nominee?
I was basically focused on keeping the House Republican, and I was very concerned about whether or not we could lose the House Republican majority. As you remember, if you know, Speaker of the House, your primary responsibility is to save House Republicans. My biggest fear, the Black Swan event we were worried about, was just think of having a Hillary Clinton presidency, a Democrat Senate run by Chuck Schumer, and a Democrat House run by Nancy Pelosi. That, to me, was the horrible scenario that I was trying to guard against. And so that was our default, break the glass, stop that from happening. Those things can happen. We had a 30-seat majority. We won 63 seats in 2014. The Democrats won 31 seats in 2008. So these things can switch back and forth fairly easily. So my goal was to protect House Republicans. At the end, we were excited about the ability to close this race as a unified Republican ticket, a unified Republican Party, so that we could have a unified Republican government, which now we're not worried. We're not looking backwards. We're looking forward, and we're excited about getting this agenda implemented.
And you said in 60 Minutes that you talk to him every day.
Yeah.
Tell me. What are those conversations like?
It's all about personnel and policy. Every conversation we have, to me, it's just, you got to know how exciting this is for us. We've been fighting Barack Obama for 8 years.
Listen,
this has been really
Mr. Speaker, I warned the country about Obama. I know all about Obama.
So to be able to talk on a daily basis with the man who's about to be the President of the United States about tackling the big problems and undoing the wreck and the mess that was made before, it's so exciting. Okay. So the conversations we have always revolve around just getting things done. How we're going to replace Obamacare, what tax reform looks like, how we're going to secure the border, how we're going to get people from welfare to work, how does rebuilding the military look like. These are the things we're talking about. And now we're just talking about how do we execute it. And we're talking about personnel, to get right people in place, those kinds of things.
I have called this election the forgotten man, forgotten woman election.
Yes.
And for an entire year on this program, I gave out statistics. 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more in poverty, lowest labor participation rate since the 70s, lowest home ownership rate in 51 years, more debt than 43 other presidents before him combined. So for me, winning elections is great, but now it's time to govern.
That's exactly right.
And that's what I want to ask you about. I want to go over the agenda. I was a little surprised at comments by Congressman Flores, and I'll get to that in a minute. I think you support originalist justices. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. I didn't hear what Bill Flores said, so I'm not sure.
I'll get to that in a second. Okay. So on the economy, which is where job creation, I think, is the most important thing. Getting people back to work, getting our economy in order, get growth. Obama will leave as the first president never to reach 3% GDP growth in a year.
That's right.
Okay, so you said 20% on 60 Minutes in terms of a corporate rate. He wants 15. Will you go to 15? Yeah,
absolutely. It's all a question of whether the numbers can add up or not. So in order to be able to pass a budget with tax reform in it, these numbers have to add up. So I would love to do 15. It all is a question of whether we can make those numbers work so that we can get the votes we need to pass that budget through. So it's simply a matter of getting it through Congress.
But you have a majority.
Well, if you want to get into the details, in the House we have a majority and we're a majoritarian body. So all I need is 218 votes and I can pass something. That doesn't work like that in the Senate.
Okay,
As you know, the Senate has a filibuster except for
Harry
budget
Reid.
reconciliation.
Well,
Harry
yeah.
Reid did the nuclear option for personnel,
Right.
not for policy. There's one bill, we call it budget reconciliation, and that cannot be filibustered.
But that's how they passed Obamacare.
No, it isn't. They passed
parts of
Obamacare. They passed Obamacare with 60 votes, and they did this side bill
Right.
to add to Obamacare with some spending and taxes.
Well, that was the reconciliation
That's
part
right.
that they
But it was
used.
they called it the sidecar.
I got it.
But here's the point. For you to be able to use reconciliation to not have a filibuster, it has to be deficit neutral. And so we have to have deficit neutral tax reform. And that's why when I say 20 to 15, 20% we know is deficit
you there.
neutral. Yeah, 20% gets us there. 15% isn't deficit neutral, but we're going to work on this bill and try and get it as best as we can so that it stays deficit neutral so that they cannot filibuster it. And that's a long answer to why there's a difference between those two numbers.
The repatriation part is what, some $2, $3, $4, $5 trillion. I don't think anybody knows the full number.
That's right.
That multinational corporations have
Right.
parked offshore because of our confiscatory rates,
Because we have
regulations.
a terrible tax code.
Right. Okay. So you agree to allow that money back at a one-time
absolutely.
10% rate?
That's part of our plan. So what we want to do is not just on a one-time basis. We want to switch our system over so that from ever more, you can always bring your money back. In the old days, meaning back in 2005, there was like
really
a little,
old, Congressman.
I don't want to go. We had a holiday.
Yeah.
So for a moment, and then what happens is people use that holiday, and then they keep their money overseas. They stockpile it, waiting for the next
want to
holiday.
make it permanent.
We want to make it permanent.
Okay, what about this idea? What would you consider maybe a 5% rate if the companies that are bringing the money back would agree to invest in Detroit, in Milwaukee,
Yeah.
in Cuyahoga County, in Cleveland?
So the big debate we will be having in the spring when that budget comes forward is, with that repatriation revenue that we get, where does it go? That's where the infrastructure conversation comes into play. That's where lots of these conversations come into play. The point is this: trillions of dollars are parked overseas that American companies would like to bring back and reinvest in this country, in this economy, creating jobs
And you're
and
going to give them
economic
the
growth.
opportunity.
Yeah, and we're going to give them the opportunity to do that.